Sounds great. Thanks, James. Hello, everybody. This is Jordan McLeod, a panelist with the Carolina Weather Group. And I'm going to talk here with WFMY News 2 meteorologist Christian Morgan, stationed in Greensboro, about some of the impacts and timing that we can expect with this impending winter storm. How are you, Christian?
Hey, Jordan, doing great. Hope you guys are. A pleasure to be with you guys on the Carolina Weather Group tonight. We always have a great time. Of course, in this situation, we're talking about what could be a pretty dangerous storm for us folks here in the Triad.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you joining us tonight. I know you're busy there at the office, but can you talk to our viewers a little bit about, I guess we'll start with timing of the storm. When can we expect the freezing rain to move in, and when should we expect it to terminate later on tomorrow?
Sure. Well, really, Wednesday has actually been a pretty really nice looking winter day across the Triad. At this point today, we have beautiful Carolina blue sky. There was barely even any clouds in the sky. So you'd never know that an ice storm was just on the heels of today, but we're going to remain dry through about midnight. And then what we're going to see is that moisture start to move in. Generally between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. is that main time frame that we're watching for things to start to begin in the Triad. And then really it lasts for several hours through morning, through midday, and maybe up even into 2 o'clock before things warm up just enough to change us over to just that cold rain. Again, really all dependent on when we warm up. If we stay below freezing, we really mentioned in a situation like this, whether you're 29 degrees, 30 degrees, 31 degrees, or if you're 33 degrees, all of those things are going to make a lot of difference in this situation of how long we hold that freezing rain concern and when it changes over to just a cold, nasty rain. But really watching it starting between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. and then lingering through 1 or 2 in the afternoon, maybe even later than that if we hold on to some of that colder air.
Yeah, and so I've seen some of the from the National Weather Service looking at anywhere from a third to as much as half an inch or more, just depending on what model or set of models you look at. What's the latest thinking at WFMY?
Yeah, so really we're just kind of watching, and this is going to be our second ice storm in a week here in the Triad. So we're not even really 100% done cleaning up from that one. And this one on the heels that's on our way tonight and tomorrow not only looks to be more significant as far as the icing totals go, it looks like it's going to cover a much larger area. So a whole lot more people than that Saturday storm did. And generally thinking around a quarter to even possibly a half of an inch of ice on the higher end, generally right along and north of that I-40 corridor, and even as far south as places like Asheboro and Lexington and Thomasville. Once you get below Asheboro and you head south, generally just kind of a minor glaze in our southernmost counties like Montgomery County, Stanley County, Moore County, those areas. But as you go up into Randolph County, that's when we start to see that 1/10 of an inch mark starting to creep in, and maybe even up to a 1/4 of an inch if you go into northern Randolph County right before you cross into Guilford. So, this is going to affect a lot of different people, generally pretty much the entire Triad. So if you think about some of our main cities, Greensboro, Winston, High Point, Burlington, you go up into Rockingham and Stokes County, those areas are going to see that 1/4 to possibly even a half of an inch of ice. And really that's all dependent on how long our temperatures stay at freezing. That's one thing we've been talking about. We could warm up to 33 around lunchtime, or it may take until the early afternoon, or really worst case scenario, it may take until Friday morning for us to come above freezing. So a lot of these totals are really dependent on that. And of course, one thing that we've been talking about, and we can dive into detail on this a little bit later if we have time, but we're really kind of looking at the precip rates about how fast that this rain is going to fall. And that can actually make a difference. If it comes down lighter, it can actually accumulate a whole lot better versus if it's raining hard and coming down at a faster rate, that actually doesn't accumulate as fast and actually just kind of helps to melt things in a way. We're kind of getting off in the weeds there, but if we want to come back and talk about that, we can. But generally 1/4 to possibly even half of an inch of ice in the Triad.
Yeah, it's shaping up to be a pretty devastating event. I'm glad you mentioned that we're just coming off the heels of one this past weekend, which downed a lot of trees and some of those fell onto power lines. So what other kinds of impacts do you foresee for this event? I mean, obviously power outages is going to be probably the headliner, but what about roads as well? Are we anticipating any road issues?
That's a really good question, and it's a question that we've actually gotten a lot over the last 24 hours. How are the roads going to be? How are the bridges going to be? And if this past weekend, is really any indication, the roads themselves shouldn't actually be too much of a problem, mainly staying wet. The other factor that, we were looking at soil temperatures earlier, and soil temperatures in the area are in the 40s. We're in the 40s today, so relatively warm. So you think about roads, asphalt especially, it has that layer of ground to keep things a little bit warmer. So we don't expect there to be too many problems on main roadways. Where you start to see some issues, of course, those bridges are going to get slick really quick, and those elevated roadways and really concrete interstates, those things are going to become slick a whole lot quicker, than just your regular roadways would be. But it's not even the fact that the roads may be slick or may not be. It's really kind of the worry of falling trees. You get this ice to start to accumulate and the branches bend and break. You could be driving down the road and, it very well can happen where trees can fall in the roadway, and trees have fallen on cars and have killed people before. So that's really kind of, when we talk about travel, when we talk about road issues, that's really one of the things that we're driving home. I really think once this freezing rain concern is over, when we're just a cold, nasty rain, the roads really aren't going to have too many problems. There will likely still be some slick spots on bridges, but then you still have that factor where you have to worry about falling trees and falling power lines in the roadway. So that's more the concern when we're speaking about roads, rather than the roads being coated, with a sheet of ice, as opposed to a snow or a sleet storm.
Great info. Frank Strait, one of our other panelists here at Carolina Weather Group, has a question for you.
Sure.
Yes, Christian, that actually sleet is one of the things I wanted to ask you about. I was looking at model output earlier today. I thought that we were, at least in the Triad and areas just north and west, that we were really close to maybe escaping the worst of the ice, or the worst possible ice, by ending up having some sleet. But I know you've looked at it in more detail than I have, at least for that particular area. So I'm curious what your thoughts are. Is there any chance that we end up with just enough of a near surface cold layer that's just cold enough and just deep enough that we can maybe get lucky and dodge a bullet and escape with a little more in the way of sleet and a little less in the way of freezing rain?
That would be best case scenario, that we get away with some sleet, because once you get that sleet coming down, that really is going to cut down on the freezing rain totals. And then again, that helps us out a lot. Freezing rain doesn't stack on and sleet doesn't stack on and build and accumulate and get thick like the freezing rain would. So that would be our hope, that we see at least some period of sleet. I think that would be mainly in for our northern counties, up along Rockingham County, Stokes County, and up along the North Carolina-Virginia border. That's where there's going to be a better chance for that to happen. Although at the onset of this tonight, there's going to be some evaporative cooling going on. And a lot of times in those situations, when it happens at a fast rate, you can get that sleet to start. So this may actually start as a period of sleet, or a sleet and freezing rain mix. So again, if there's any sleet, that would help us out a lot. I think it's just going to be a touch and go situation, and we'll have to find out how much and how fast that column can cool when the precip comes in, and how much evaporative cooling we do.